Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series on all things pertaining to business valuations. I'm Melissa Gragg, a financial expert witness in St. Louis, and I have the pleasure today of discussing divorce and court and trials with Rany Kessler. He is actually a high-profile divorce lawyer in Atlanta, Georgia for over 30 years. He has founded and is a partner in KS Family Law, a 30-person family law firm in Atlanta. And he represents some very interesting people, entertainers, athletes. He's handled some cases that you probably have heard of: the Real Housewife, Nene leaks, Evander Holyfield, Ludacris, Usher, and even Michael Jordan. Wow. You know, we're all watching The Last Dance right now. So
we're on the other side of that one, but you know, who's
okay.
counting?
Right. He also has written a book called Divorce, Protect Yourself, Your Kids, and Your Future. You can actually get that at divorceprotectyourself.com. He was the former chair of the family law section of the American Bar Association. He's a current professor at Emory Law School, which we will talk about. And he has also created a new app and website called starsona.com, which actually provides personal videos from stars to their fans, which is very interesting.
Yep.
One of the really cool things is that Rany has actually reached this highly regarded status on LinkedIn called an influencer with over 425,000 followers. That's pretty impressive. Welcome, Rany. We're so lucky to have you.
Wow. Thank you for that intro. Do we have any time left? That was amazing.
Right. Well, we're actually going to talk about a pretty fun topic, I think, at least for you and I, about the future of divorce court or divorce litigation. So you actually wrote an article for law.com titled Trial by Zoom. We've begun a new era. And I really liked the article, but it was about the final exam for Emory Law School, and it was a jury trial class, and it was a divorce case. So how did the students how were they able to simulate a real trial? Like, what were some of the specifics? How did this work?
Well, first of all, Melissa, thank you for having me on. It's flattering to be asked to be on, and I always love seeing you. I'd rather see you in person, but Zoom and internet ain't so bad. So to set it up for you all, in Georgia, we sometimes do trials by jury for divorce. Everyone has the choice. They can say, I want a jury trial to divide the money. And every now and then it happens. Not a lot. I've done 30 or 40 over 30 years. So it's not that many yet. Can you imagine doing a divorce case by jury? So what we do at Emory Law School is we teach jury trials. And the students, the first week, they do their practice opening statements. And then the next week it's direct exam. And then we actually have real business valuation experts, legitimate ones that we use in court, come in and talk to the students about how they work and how they can help the students or help the lawyers. And then they practice cross-examining and direct examining the business valuation and their report. And then the final trial every year is actually in a courthouse, and it's a divorce fact pattern. So we go down to the Fulton County or DeKalb County courthouse. There are 4 dockets, 2 students representing mom, 2 students representing dad, and a judge and a bailiff. And the judge and the bailiff grade them. And we do the whole trial. We have high school students or senior citizens as jurors. And the students at this point were really disappointed. Of course, we all were, that they weren't going to get to have their final trials, but they had them. Now, we didn't use jurors because it would have been too complicated, but we had Emory technicians on standby in case something happened that went wrong. But each of the 4 dockets had a real judge, a real professor, and 4 students trying their entire case. And it was great, not just because of what the students learned, but what we learned and what the judges learned. And the first thing that we learned is you can do it. You can present evidence. And then we started to count the benefits and the disadvantages, and the benefits way outweighed the disadvantages.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll talk later, I'm sure, about how being in person is much better for a lot of reasons, and judging and gauging somebody's demeanor is better. But I mean, I could start listening and we'd be here all day, Melissa, if I talked to you about the idea that, for instance, objections. The way we objected, students didn't have to yell and jump up and scream and get the judge's attention. They just raised a paddle or a sheet that said, objection. They held it right to the screen. If the judge wasn't paying attention, say, Your Honor, and the judge would look up and see objection and stop everything. Much more polite, much more dignified.
And I think that, we understand a lot of the benefits from an efficiency standpoint, like as an expert witness, we could come in 9 o'clock docket, but 3 other things have to be heard. So now it's 10:30, 11 o'clock. And then
absolutely,
maybe we get on the stand, maybe not, but then everybody gets hungry. So then we got to leave at noon and come back at 1. And I mean, it's so much going on that and you're kind of tied up for the entire day, of course, charging your client, right? And you really maybe only testify 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, but you're there for all day. I think that's one of the benefits I've seen.
Let's keep going. Or the lawyers, they switch courtrooms because the judge has to yield the courtroom to a bigger case, and the lawyer forgets to tell you which courtroom to meet in. Or your report is 14 volumes and you have to bring it up the elevator, and the elevator is crowded and you can't use the stairs. Well, we preloaded all the evidence. So all we'd have to say is, Your Honor, I'd like to pull up Exhibit 32A and share it on the screen. And there it is. Right. And we didn't have to make copies, and we didn't have to break our back bringing it up. So yeah, there are a lot of benefits.
That's true. Because you have people that are like, go to Exhibit 32, and you open up the book, there's no exhibit. And you're like, really? Okay. Right. This is not working. But
and you need to make copies for everybody usually. So it's not just your copy, it's the judge and the judge's assistant and the lawyer and the opposing counsel. And the client needs to say, me too, I need to see a copy. And, and your paralegal, you want them to follow. So it was so much easier that way.
Well, and I think that the other, some of the other issues is that you get to court, everybody's prepared, everybody's ready to go. And then something happens, or the judge isn't there, and then you've done all of these things and you actually are not even going to go to trial that day. I think that those, like from an efficiency standpoint, I think everybody, the courts, the attorneys, the experts, all believe that this is the way to go. But I think that there are also some of the difficulties, with how do we really facilitate that? Now, a jury trial, completely different, right? But divorce court, we're usually judge and 2 attorneys, 2 client. I mean, it's not like what everybody thinks on TV. There's not a packed courtroom, right. There's a handful of people. And so why not do it in that aspect? What do you think are some of the problems that people are already going to sense?
Well, I'm thinking big. I'm thinking jury trials are going to happen. So if a jury trial can happen, like you said, divorce, basically an administrative hearing with a judge, you think of jury trials, sooner or later, if every potential juror has a device, or we can make available a Wi-Fi room the juror can go to, you might have people saying, well, I'm a criminal defendant and I'm entitled to a jury, but I'm going to sit in jail for 2 years unless I agree to do a jury by Zoom. So when there's, they say necessity is the mother of invention. So if they're thinking about those things, certainly we can figure out the issues you're talking about. How can you not do it by Zoom? How can you not get on the camera and say, you know what, Your Honor, we're going to do this. And guess what? Even if the problems you mentioned, Melissa, happen, the judge has another trial or a family emergency, at least I didn't get in my car, put my stuff in, drive downtown, go through security, get on the elevator, unpack my bags. If the judge says we're going to have to come back tomorrow, I take my tie off, I take my suit off, and I jump back in my bed, or I do whatever I want to do. So nothing's as bad as first blush. There are those issues, though. What happens when people cheat? Someone is texting their client what to say during the testimony. Well, I mean, we have that problem now. People could be whispering or, yes for right ear. No, there'll have to be regulations and punishments and penalties and trust issues. And maybe there'll be a backup camera that shows what you're doing with your hands if you've got a reputation for cheating. And, so I haven't figured all that stuff out, and nobody has yet. But the benefits have to outweigh the disadvantages. The fact that we could have, I had 2 hearings last week. That's not a big deal to do 2 in one day. We've done them. You've had to do 2 in one day. But in Georgia, we have a lot of different counties. I had one in Fulton County in the morning and one in Gwinnett County in the afternoon. And I was finished the one in Fulton County at 9:45, and at 10:30 I was at the one in Gwinnett County, because you're everywhere by the internet. So you can be much more mobile. You can get a lot more done.
But you bring up a good point that if you give people the option of doing like a Zoom, maybe because not every case is so complex, and they still, if you gave people the option of saying you can do Zoom and you can have a trial in July, or you do in person and your trial's not till December, you're going to have a ton of people that do that. My concern though is also for just the court system in general. Like I get clients that are calling me all the time and they're like, divorce court's going to open up soon and we're going to file and we need to get ready. And I'm thinking, okay, the court's not really closed.
Right.
Like, what are some misconceptions that people have right now that things are closed? And is Georgia divorce courts closed right now, or can you file divorce papers like right now?
Yeah, you made me think of something. I'm not going to forget it.
Okay.
But actually, I'm going to say it before I forget it. And then I'm going to answer your question. I never thought about this until just now. You made me think of this, Melissa. Courts sometimes cancel and then you got to reschedule and come back. And sometimes the courts put 4 or 5 cases down because they're afraid they'll get to work. The judge will get to work and the case will settle and they won't have anything to do. And the taxpayers are paying them. So they have 2, 3, 4 cases, get ready. Sometimes judges say, can you be a backup case? And so if my case settles, you guys can come down here in a few hours. I'm now guessing or prognosticating the courts will allow us to be on Zoom backup, saying if you really need a hearing soon, I don't have any time for the next 6 weeks, but if you're willing to be available on 2 hours notice, when one of my cases settles, I will email everybody. And if you all can jump on a camera, we can get it done. And you can fill in my 2 hours that I found available from 10 o'clock till noon. So that's another benefit. I didn't think about that. I'm sorry to
Oh yeah. I mean, I think the scheduling is going to be amazing because right now, I don't know about your court system, but right now, like we could all be ready to go to start court. And then somebody comes in and they get back into chambers and they have to have a conversation and we're on pause. And half the time we're sitting around being like, does anybody know when we're going?
And you're billing the poor client who has to pay for that. Now you don't have to worry about that. The client can get a better bang for their buck.
Yeah, no. And
court's at 9, court's over at 10. No driving home, no talking to the client in the hallway, no running into your friends and having to charge the client because you can't get home to do your other work. None of those issues. But
and like high net worth divorces, I mean, usually are complex, right? Because there's a lot of things going on, but not always are they like sometimes it's just big dollars. It may not be huge complexity. It could have been that they settled most of the issues prior, right? We all work hard to settle it, but it's like one thing that they can't come to agreement. Either it's maintenance or a child custody issue.
You're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, and sometimes people just need to be heard. And look, we've had that. We've had a professional athlete and there was a $40 million estate. And the first mediation we settled 2020. 4 mediations later, we got everything done except for one who made the decision on extracurriculars. And we had to have a hearing on that because they just couldn't reach that last agreement. Sometimes people need to be heard or they need someone to put their foot down. And if you can just get 30 minutes with a judge who will look at them and say, you guys can fight about this, but this is what I'm going to do. You can either go settle it or you can argue for the next 2 hours, but you better have something better than what your lawyers told me you have. And that kind of pretrial conference thing, it's more effective when you really see the judge and hear from the judge. And your client can see too, and the judge can have more of an effect wearing the robe saying, I'll hear it, I'll be fair, but you better have better evidence than just, what Ms. Gragg told me is the evidence in this case. Because if that's the evidence, you're going to get what they're offering, and I'm not going to award anymore. Right.
No, I agree.
You asked me if the courts are closing, and I didn't mean to skirt that. I just didn't want to forget my answer to the other thing. They never closed, right? We always had courts open. First, there were some judges that were on the forefront, the cutting edge, that said, let's do a conference call. And we've been doing conference calls for years. Let's put a camera on and do it by Zoom or FaceTime or Google Duo. Well, now they're passing rules. Georgia just passed a Superior Court rule that allows hearings, not final trials, but hearings by Zoom. So even if you don't agree, judges can make you do that. So it's happening. So people that call you and me that say, well, I guess the courts are opening. Can we get a divorce now? You could have gotten a divorce last week. You might not have gotten a final trial yet. But how many cases actually go to final trial anyway? The work you're doing, the valuation stuff, that's going on anyway. The lawyering, the negotiating, the posturing, the gathering the information, that's going on. Final trials are always in the distant future anyway. We don't wait to file a case until we know we have a court date. You file when somebody needs a divorce, and you hope you get a court date soon, and sometimes it takes 2 years, and sometimes it takes 2 months. Not much difference here, except the final trial. Someone wants to delay it. They could probably put it off for a while, but sooner or later, the judge is going to get wind of it and say, you know what, we're getting on a camera, and we're going to get this thing done.
Well, and that's what I feel like could be one of the issues. If like, let's say I don't really want to get divorced. And so now we're all on camera, we're at trial, and oh, I can't hear you, or oh, my camera's not working, or in some cases, I've even heard attorneys say we're concerned about who else is in the room, because you don't know if right now I have an audience of 10 people in the room, or if it's just me, and what if I just am sick of, because everybody just gets at the time that you actually get to trial. Everybody is sick of the process, right? Yep. The clients are done. And what if they're on camera and you have one client that's like fakes, basically, that they don't have good internet, or my computer died. That's the only thing that I see as a real issue in stopping some of the process.
But there are fixes for that. I had a client that had a heart attack in court, and judge thought he was faking it. I don't know if he was faking it or not. The ambulance came and took him out. He was a doctor faced with going to jail. So same concept. People can do the same stuff, but sooner or later the truth does come out, and people that do that kind of stuff get found out. And do you really want to be the person that gets caught doing that? If you get caught doing that and they have an IT expert come out and prove that your internet was working fine, then you're really risking a lot. It's not necessarily worth the risk to some people, but maybe the other thing is the feedback. There's something different. How did my argument affect the judge? Did I see the other side wince? I didn't get to see how the other side's reacting because I didn't see their face on the screen when I was talking. It makes me think one thing that probably will never be successful on Zoom is stand-up comedy. Mm-hmm. You don't know if the audience is laughing, right? You tell a joke and you think you're playing to an empty room. So you do need that feedback.
That was one of the questions that I had is, I think that what everybody is concerned about, and I hear this from divorce attorneys in these online trials, it's about the psychology of the trial process. We go in there and it's a performance for all intents and purposes. Now, when we see each other in the hallways, I know all the other experts, I know all the attorneys, I know the judges, and so do you. And we're all like, hey, what's going on? What's going on? And the clients enter and we're like, I will see you in court, and for me, the psychology is watching the judge, right? I don't necessarily care how hard an attorney comes for me, because half the time I'm not even looking at them. Like, I'm just looking at the judge, and like, if I see that face or the it's usually the furrowed brow, right, that I'm like, okay, I need to say it again in another way. But I think that that's what is going to be hard for some people. It's just that, especially if you've done your whole career having kind of a litigation process,
You're right. I mean, you bring up 2 points. One is, we're all self-aware. Maybe judges that make furrowed brows or roll their eyes will see themselves and say, I shouldn't do that. And maybe lawyers will see, oh, my tie's not crooked. We should become more self-aware. But what you're saying is absolutely right. I mean, clients pay me and you to tell their story. They've lived this horrible life. They've been a victim for the last 30 years. They paid us a lot of money to march into court and explain to the judge what's been done to them. And I've got to put on the show and I've got to do it authentically. But they want their lawyer to be impressive. They want their lawyer to be well-dressed. They want their lawyer to have the best computer, the best staff, the best arguments, the best, written briefs. And you lose some of that on Zoom. And what about younger lawyers may have the advantage? Younger lawyer has a better internet connection and knows how to manipulate the process and knows how to get the ring light so that they're lit up better than the other side who's in a dark room because they don't want their spouse to hear and they're in the basement. There are a whole bunch of different issues people that are more comfortable on camera, like on social media, the TikTokers may rule the world.
Oh, yeah.
The best litigators may be the best TikTokers of today. So it's a change, it's an evolution. But and we started this talking about my law school class, and I had to encourage them and make them not feel so bad. And I told them when I came out of law school, there was a whole new evidence code. So I started with the new evidence code, but the older lawyers were upset. They had to learn all the new statutes and the new numbers. They're coming out of law school today. Granted, the job market is harder, but they know how to use technology. And I'm an older lawyer. And if I have a young lawyer that knows how to make sure my Zoom works and everything else goes flawlessly, and they're not weirded out by having to try a whole case electronically, they've got an advantage over their opponents. I mean, it's something new, and it is new litigation. Like it or not, I mean, it's here to stay. It's more efficient. And then you start counting the benefits if you're in government, if you're in the judicial system, if you're a court administrator. Wow, I don't need the bailiff to be there today because nobody's in person. I don't have to worry about this family violence case where we got to keep the parties separated. I don't have to worry about someone getting lost in traffic and us having to start late. I mean, there are all these good reasons from a court administrative perspective to do virtual hearings and virtual trials and virtual conferences. It's just, the more you think about it, the more you start to realize, why haven't we been doing this all along? Granted, there wasn't the technology. You couldn't have the flawless video, and it's going to get better, right? 5G, 6G, 7G. It's going to be like real time.
Yeah. Well, and I think that even, if you look at Zoom, if you look at GoToMeeting or any of those, we could have all of the cameras, but you could also be sharing your screen. And instead of everybody looking for exhibit 54 or 23, then they can look for, you can just say, here's the exhibit, like from my standpoint as an expert witness, it's going to be phenomenal because instead of saying, what number are they looking at on the sheet, right? I can point exactly to it like a whiteboard. I can highlight things. All of that stuff, people didn't do as much because it was like laborious to even have that available.
Yeah, imagine the quote from the deposition that you want to show to everybody. Not just is it easier, it is more impressive. And I'll tell you a quick story. We had a jury trial against Evander Holyfield years ago, and it was his best year. And he made $40 million in 2 different fights. And the courtroom had just bought this thing called an Elmo. Nobody knew what it was. And they just put in screens, and this was a jury trial. So the thing is, you put something on the screen, and all of a sudden it shows up on 12 jurors' screens, on each witness's screen, above the judge, above the witness. And we put his income from his budget on the Elmo, and all of a sudden it was in everybody's face. Mm-hmm. And this is the same thing. You want to make sure somebody sees something. Criminal trials, talk about a literal smoking gun. Juries crane their head. Was that the gun when they pull the gun out of the paper and they show and they tag it with exhibit 45A? Well, you put that right here. You're actually looking at the thing that killed somebody. You're looking at the document. You're looking at the paycheck. You're looking at a W-2 where the guy makes more money in a month than anybody in the room makes in 10 years. And how much more powerful can you get than that?
And I think it's going to be, literally, it's going to take people practicing. It's going to take people testing this out and kind of being forced to. In my mind, this change is happening probably 3 to 5 years sooner than I expected. So I saw it coming. I think we all saw it coming. It had to. But this crisis and this time is kind of creating it so that we have to do it. Now, perception is everything. Just like you said, your clients see, so if I'm fumbling around and I don't know what is a camera over here, is a like that kind of stuff, it's going to not look great on me as with a jury or a judge, so you're going to, but I think that's what we do anyway. We practice, we practice you can watch somebody get up into like the expert box or whatever, the testifying box. And if they're, like in one of the counties that I work at, the chairs don't move, right? So if they go and try to pull the chair or they can't get in, they've never been there. Like, that's my sign of like, oh, is this your first time? Okay, let's have some fun, but I think it's going to take practice. I think the younger generation may not have the experience of law, but they have the experience of technology. But even in the courts, I think that the courts are going to need, we've kind of converted to audio recording instead of having like a court reporter really typing things all the time. Not all courts are like that. But I can see that the judge has now like a technology person that facilitates those that, because Zoom, you can have rooms, like you're doing mediation, you can put people in rooms, like go talk to your people. So it can be, the technology is there. It's just that where do you see divorce litigation in the future, 6 months or a year? Do you see them actually changing, or do you see them kind of like, oh, let's go back to how it was?
I see 50% or more being virtual. We've already had judges that would pick up the phone and say, let's have a conference call, which is very similar to what we're doing now. And I'm also very fortunate. Of our 15 lawyers, only 3 of us are over 50 years old. So these young lawyers, and we debate internally, maybe some trade secrets being disclosed here, but, we have this internal debate. Do we demand that lawyers be in the office and have FaceTime and they're present? Or do we look at the hours that they're working and see how much they build and say, what do we care if they're getting the work done? And it's not just video, it's also your cell phone is your office phone. VoIP phones get transferred from your office phone to your cell phone. So, we're ready for this. And lawyers are not getting, older. The younger generation is coming in and they're taking over. I don't see how we're going to be able to resist that tidal wave of, why should I drive down to the courthouse and risk getting a flat tire and pay the toll on the highway and get in traffic and pay for gas and charge my client for the travel time? Client, would you rather stay home and turn on your computer at 9:00 and be ready for the hearing? Or would you rather meet me at 7:30 to make sure we're there on time? And I know you found their courthouse correctly and it's the same courthouse. Yes, there are criminal trials going on in that same courthouse. Do you still want to meet me there, or would you rather do it virtually? And to take it a step further, and we're building our own courtroom in our office so that we can have private trials or private Zoom trials to avoid them even when they have to go to court. It's just, I think the future is getting away from the courthouse, getting away from the in-person appearance at the courthouse.
Well, I think that's a good segue, because I was like, how do we get prepared to do online divorce? And that is, during this time of change, I like to call it a time of change. During this time of change, we've had to internally replicate everything. So we can do this at home, we can do this at work, and we have duplicates of everything. And I think that your idea of kind of replicating because you need no background, you need everything. I was doing a lot of Zoom calls at my home office, and I was like, you guys get to see a lot about me here. Yeah. Maybe I should stop that. But
we're still
what else can we do, though?
I mean, we're still a legal system. People have, a lot of it is image and expectation, and people are scared, and they get confidence when they come into a lawyer's office who looks like a lawyer and acts like a lawyer and talks like a lawyer and has law books. Now, the truth is, I can do just as good a job thinking about a case, sitting on the beach, and well, maybe not. Maybe I'd be a little distracted. But the point is, you're lawyers and you're experts, and you've got to act like them and you got to feel like them, and clients have to have confidence in you. So, yeah, we can replicate it. I think, virtual backgrounds are still not there yet. I think they're not perfect, but they'll get there where the virtual background looks like you are really in a courtroom, or it looks like you're really in your office. But I agree that you have to have a good background. You can't have the dog walking across your lap while you're charging somebody $500 an hour to give them advice. So you still have to do it and do it right. But for us, we're going to have a big courtroom that's going to have social distancing and have screens. So if somebody can't make it there, their screen will be on the table and it'll look like they're in court with us. So that's sort of what we're doing to be still real, physical office lawyers.
That's probably the most brilliant thing that I've heard. Because, I mean, not during this time. This is all brilliant. Yeah. But that is really, you have to, for those of us who are used to trial situations, right? For the young people, they're going to be like, what? You guys actually went together? They're going to forget about this. But for us, I think having it still simulate, because you get in the zone and you get your mind right, okay, but it's also ease of use.
We're putting the flags up. We have the seal of the great state of Georgia. We have a platform. The judges' bench is raised. So it feels, there are reasons the courtrooms are built formally and make you feel a sense of, you better whisper, you better not act up. This is a revered place. And, this is someone's life. And it's harder to negotiate and advocate and litigate about someone's life when everyone's sitting in their living room, maybe in their pajamas. I mean, there's got to be some civility and some seriousness to it. So for those cases that require it,
it's efficiency, though. I mean, it's efficiency. It's, if we have it set up that we can just come, you sit down, there's a computer there, everything is there. You can easily use it. You're not, I'm pulling my computer from my office and going in, if you make it easy for people, I think that's where they're going to be. But also, one of the things that I didn't know if you guys were doing a lot of, but what has kept me super busy lately is that even if people were in, and I've seen this start to happen for a while, but, I have seen people be more open, even if they're in litigation. There's a lot of pseudo mediation that we're doing. We're negotiating, we're going back and forth, we're trying to educate, on what the reality, if you want $1 million of maintenance and your husband only makes 200,000, you're not going to get it. It's educating.
Hey, know about my case?
But do you think that there's going to be more divorce mediation or collaborative divorce as people are going to be more open to it because they don't want to deal with the court system?
I mean, I don't want to give this virus any credit and say anything good about it. But the fact that the courts are not allowing final trials yet, and they think a final trial is too much to do by video, means people have to use alternative dispute resolution. You have no choice. I mean, it used to be courts are busy. It's expensive. Let's see if mediation might work. Let's push mediation a little bit. Now, I mean, if you want to result fast, if you want to get divorced, and people want to get divorced more often because they want to move on with their life than because they want more money, it's pushing people more into mediation. But it's easier to do mediation. It's easier to schedule it now. I mean, it just, I want to take a lunch break. Okay, I'll be back in 5 minutes. Not I'm going to take the elevator, go downstairs, go find, I want to take a cigarette break. Okay, I'm smoking a cigarette. It's my house. I can smoke a cigarette. It's not courthouse rules. I think mediation is absolutely taking leaps and bounds. But again, just like we talked earlier, Melissa, there's something about being in person, and there's some cases that just are not going to work as well by Zoom. You just need that touchy-feely. And sometimes in divorce, what I experience a lot is that sometimes the husband or the wife will tell everybody, I want to go talk to my spouse. I don't want anybody else around. It's been 12 hours. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to go put my foot down, and we're going to get this thing done. And we're going to compromise it. You sort of lose that, although we could put them in a room, get a room. But so there's a balance. There's, nothing's perfect. If it was that good and it was perfect, we certainly would have been doing it all before now. So we're wrestling with the cost benefit analysis. And I think, like we say, necessity is the mother of invention. If there's no other way to resolve it but a Zoom mediation, I've had that conversation 4 or 5 times in the last 2 weeks. You got a choice. You can wait until the courts reopen, or we can try this.
Well, and I think there's something, there's something to be said about, we know that there's a huge amount of cases that get settled on the courtroom steps. Everybody finally gets to that point and they're like, oh, this is serious. I'm going to court. I'm going to finally give on that stupid issue that I had, had a problem with, the dog or something, you know what I'm saying? They're like, okay, this is serious, because it is so difficult for clients to go to court, to testify in court. If you've never testified in court or been in that situation, it is terrifying and very difficult emotionally, physically, things like that. Whereas I think that what we will see is, but there's still maybe an outstanding issue. Well, again, you're getting it to the point where one outstanding issue is not that difficult to deal with online, on an online trial, as opposed to an entire trial. But I think that this time period has really helped people start to, again, I say they're doing mediation. They're really in litigation. They're just more willing to facilitate. We work for both parties sometimes. This is a great situation because I can get them in the room and say, I know that you think this, but this is the reality. I'm not for either one of you.
Well,
it's the reality.
Yeah. I mean, Melissa, when you look at it this way, when I talk to my client, your choice is stay married for another 6 months until this thing passes, or do a virtual mediation. I mean, it makes it a little simple. Okay, I'd rather get divorced and deal with all the technology. People are terrified of technology. I'd rather wait. I just don't want to do technology. You want to stay married you want to stay in the same house because there's no temporary support issue. Okay, I'll try mediation. So people will give in, and it'll be shocking. I think, like you said, lawyers are late adopters. It's very rare that lawyers are leading the way in technology. But 2, 3, 4 years from now, we're going to say, why did it take a virus to get us here? This is where we should be.
And you have younger judges. You have everybody's continuing, but I think that it will continue to change. I think that what I'm seeing a little bit with clients is just an apprehension for how long they're going to have to wait, and so in the meantime, once they understand that if they came up with a settlement, it's going to be much easier to get that into, read into the court transcripts or anything online now, or in the next 6 months, I think that they would take a different decision. But there's a lot of people, and this is, maybe one of our last questions, but there's a lot of people that are kind of like, should I wait? Would I get a better situation if I wait? Or should I get it done now because I don't know how bad it's going to be? A lot of business owners want to just get divorced right now because they think that this is the worst it could possibly be. Okay. But I don't, do you see that? Or do you see people just kind of, let's forge ahead? Who cares? Because we don't like each other.
I think people are going to just move forward. They're going to have no choice but to move forward. It's just really, it comes down to the pressure of staying married. They came to us to get them out of this relationship. To get them out of this relationship requires adapting and doing something new. And that's just what they're going to have to do. I don't think there's really much of a choice. I just don't see an alternative. I know that old joke, why is divorce so expensive? Because it's worth it. And it carries some weight and some meaning. There, people want to get to the end. And, there are people that have described it as getting out of jail. I joke that I call myself a freedom lawyer sometimes. People say, I'm paying you to get me out of jail. And I say, what'd you do? And they say, well, I feel like I'm in jail.
Right.
And so you'll do whatever you can to get out of jail. You'll do whatever you can to get out of a miserable situation. And I don't think the problems presented by new technology are so bad that people would stay in the relationships that they've paid thousands of dollars to a complete stranger to help them get out of. The math doesn't add up.
It's time to go. It's time to leave. Well, thank you so much for coming on to valuationpodcast.com. I always enjoy talking to you. We've met in the past. I've interviewed you in the past for other reasons.
Great. I miss seeing you at these NACFA seminars and the in-person meetings, which we will get back to.
We'll get back to it. Okay. Well, you have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks for having me.